All right, thank you very much, everyone. So excellence from touchdown to takeoff. Contrary to all the praise I just got from Steve, this talk won't be about my consulting practice. All right, excellence in aviation from touchdown to takeoff. Like excellence in aviation, you would think airplane inventors, Wright brothers, or early 20th century pilots like Lindbergh. But by the end of 20th century, someone came up with a completely different way of excelling at aviation. This slogan belongs to an interesting company called Menzies Aviation. It's a remarkable company because its presence is found or felt in many airports around the world, yet it's mostly out of sight. And when I approached a check-in counter at a certain mid-sized American airport, and I realized that the two agents at the counter were dressed not quite the right shade of blue of the Air Canada uniform at the time, I was compelled to ask them, do you work for Air Canada actually, or for Menzies? And they were really surprised pleasantly that I even knew about the existence of Menzies Aviation. So they were willing to chat with me and share some stories about their company. Menzies is a company with a very unusual history. It started in mid-19th century in Edinburgh, Scotland. The founder was John Menzies. And originally this company was a news agent, or in American and Canadian English, we call it a newsstand. So John Menzies found a chain of newsstands. The company later expanded into retail and distribution, and in the late 19th century formed a Menzies Aviation division to provide baggage handling services at airports. And nowadays, Menzies Aviation provides all kinds of ground services to many airlines worldwide. So we can see this truck that provides a ladder that passengers use to board an airplane. In the background, there's a fueling truck that delivers fuel. And as I said, at the gate, at the check-in and at the gate, there were actually two Menzies employees dressed in a fake airline uniform, providing services such as check-in and boarding. What I learned from the director of operations of Menzies Aviation for that particular airport, who happened to be one of those two employees at the counter. So what she explained to me was basically this. A lot of airlines have only one or two or very few flights out of particular airports, and in those cases, it's uneconomical for them to station their own employees near that airport to actually do the work. So they're effectively forced to outsource that kind of work, and Menzies provides those kinds of outsourcing services. So in this particular American airport, two large American airlines, American and United, use their staff only. Delta and JetBlue provide some services on their own and outsource others to Menzies. And airlines such as Air Canada, that has only 3 flights out of this particular airport, 2 to Toronto and 1 to Montreal, they outsource absolutely everything to Menzies. And the Irish airline, Aer Lingus, whose plane is seen in this picture, also outsources everything. And the airlines do this outsourcing in at least 3 different ways. For example, British Airways requires Menzies employees to dress in Menzies uniforms. If they screw up, passengers will blame whom? Menzies, not British Airways. But Aer Lingus wants a different experience for their passengers. So Menzies employees are actually dressed in bright green Irish-themed uniforms. You won't be able to tell them from proper Aer Lingus employees. This works really well for American vacationers going to Ireland. Aer Lingus has a direct flight to Dublin from quite a few American airports, including one daily flight to Dublin from this one. And so when the passengers show up at the check-in counter and are greeted by these agents dressed in bright green uniforms, they feel like they're in Ireland already. It's a really good experience. There is a risk to the airline, of course, that if these agents make a mistake, then the airline will take the blame, while Menzies will be conveniently anonymous. And Air Canada actually bought kind of an intermediate service from Menzies that provides some degree of anonymity, but at the same time you can tell quite easily that this is an outsourcing operation. And what's interesting is that despite the long history of John Menzies' company as a news agent, as a retail and distribution company, nowadays Menzies Aviation is by far the largest division of the company, much bigger than all others combined. So there was an exchange between airlines and Menzies Aviation. It's an outsourcing contract. There is some exchange of money for services. And I would say Menzies may be getting the better end of the deal there, even if it's a fair amount of money for services. It's now Menzies' frontline staff who get to interact with travelers, know their story, and know why you fly. And airlines may be losing this knowledge, and this knowledge has some real value because it affects business strategy. So why is this important? And now I have to switch back and just give a bit of introduction of fit-for-purpose framework, which David Anderson and I developed, and we wrote a book about it. So fit-for-purpose framework is a system for businesses to understand who their customers are, how those customers choose products and services, what criteria actually matter to them and don't matter, and develop and deliver fit-for-purpose products and services, and keep doing it over time. Within fit-for-purpose framework, we like to differentiate design, implementation, and service delivery. Design is roughly the what, implementation is the how, and the service delivery is customer's experience of consumption. You put those three components together, and then the customer determines the fitness for purpose by, let's say, selecting this product or selecting competing product or maybe even something else. What we also notice is that companies tend to overestimate design and implementation, and service delivery is often the afterthought. And I want to show you some examples how this plays out in transportation in a particular part of the world, in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor in Canada, in the Canadian province of Ontario. This is what it roughly looks like. Toronto is a big city. It's actually the third largest city in the US and Canada after New York and Los Angeles. It's slightly bigger than Chicago. Waterloo is a mid-sized metropolis of about 500,000 people, including neighboring cities and suburbs. There's about 115-kilometer distance between them. But it's quite a challenging drive if you want to make it in the rush hour. So let's say we want to go to Toronto in the morning on a weekday. What is the fittest service? People who have never actually done this trip will tell you this train is. Because it's a train, it has a dedicated track, it can achieve a higher rate of speed than any vehicle on the highway, at least legally. And it should be immune to traffic jams, right? Well, there's actually another service. Which service is fitter? How do we decide? Can we decide that by comparing technology, by comparing technical characteristics of these vehicles? We need to know how customers actually choose. So here's a customer story. I have a meeting in downtown. It starts at 9 a.m. I need to be on time. What's the fitness criteria for this purpose? The last responsible moment to leave from home and not be late. So when is the last responsible moment for the train? Well, let's look up the train schedule and find out. Now, how fit is this service? That's pretty shocking. Well, it turns out the bus service is fitter. So judgments about buses versus trains in general aren't helpful here. People who actually have to set their alarm clocks or drive their family member to a bus or train station in the morning, or people who actually have to find a ride that early in the morning, every minute counts. The reason the train has such an early responsible moment, no one actually thought about the schedule. There is a significant gap between departure times and arrival times are almost perfectly inconvenient to get to the meeting on time. And that's why the train loses. Let's consider another example. We're going back in the evening. Which service is fitter? That familiar green train or this gray bus? Oh, wait, there's another service. There's another train. Where was it in the morning? Oh, the train company canceled it. So how can we decide? Well, fitness criteria are actually quite different here. We want to arrive earlier, so the duration of travel time actually matters quite a bit. We don't have a deadline like 9 o'clock to be at home. We also value convenience because we might want to do some work on our laptop, finish some email or report or whatever. So some network connection would help. So let's compare. The bus is quite unpredictable in the evening rush hour. It almost never on time at 7 o'clock in the evening, usually arrives quite a bit late. Also, for some mysterious reason, the boarding place going back is 1.4 kilometers away from the point where you got dropped off in the morning, and that's quite a hike. Why it is so is a total mystery. And if you take the green train, you are going to enjoy a little bit more than 2 hours of subway car level convenience. No Wi-Fi, no power outlets. Well, your arrival time will be predictably mediocre. Now, with another train company that didn't even bother running the morning train, you're going to get fast, predictable arrival, large seats, Wi-Fi, power supply. Effectively, their seats are as comfortable as business class seats on an airplane. And it's not too expensive. This train service is the fittest of the three. The green train, into which the government of Ontario has recently invested $400 million, isn't fit for either purpose. Connecting to the airport, which is about 90 kilometers away, is a challenge. Well, there is a company that declared their mission to serve passengers needing this long connection. Well, let's have a look at their fitness. Well, going home from the airport, predictability doesn't matter. As for duration, 2 to 3 hours is a reasonable duration considering the distance. And this shared van is quite fit for purpose. But if you want to go to the airport, high predictability is a must. You must not miss your flight. But it turns out that this shared van has quite a few sources of delay and variability besides highway traffic. And when we had an event called Data-Driven Decisions Demystified in Seattle about 2.5 years ago, I had 3.5 hour cushion, and I almost missed my flight, because they rescheduled my departure so that they could pick more passengers around town. They moved the departure so that it could match my shuttle with more passengers. And in order to run the shuttles more efficiently, they transferred us at the halfway point from one shuttle to another. And I never used that shuttle again to go to the airport. So going home from the airport, this van is perfectly fit for purpose. Going to the airport, take the taxi. So back to the fit-for-purpose framework, we need to understand market segmentations. We need to understand customers form market segments based on purpose. All of these stories, all of these transportation stories happened to me while I was of a certain age, gender, income level. I'm the same demographic. If you segment your market demographically, I am one segment. If you segment it by purpose, I represent many different purposes, and I live in many different segments. So in different segments, customers apply different fitness criteria, they choose differently. So segmenting your market by demographics will miss those insights. Segmenting your market by purpose will catch those insights. Typical fitness criteria include time, such as duration. We saw it on the airport shuttle. Predictability, using the same shuttle to go to the airport or going to an important meeting that starts in the morning. Timeliness, how often you actually arrive on time. Quality, functional, such as having certain features, let's say Wi-Fi on board. Non-functional, how comfortable your seat is, how likely is it that you will actually spend an hour and a half working as opposed to staring out the window because the seat is too uncomfortable to work, or you don't have enough, let's say, back support or elbow room. Safety and conformance. Well, all these transportation services are largely conformant and safe enough. Optionality, which is ability to configure our service, use it in some personalized fashion, somewhat lacking from all these services. Let's consider another example. So this is a downtown to airport train. This is a wonderful idea, state-of-the-art train technology, dedicated track, or almost dedicated with the right of way. A very quick trip from downtown to the airport, that's the idea. A couple of stops along the way to pick up more passengers. What can possibly go wrong here? So here's the billboard advertising this train service. Now, the company operating this train can make all kinds of representations about their service without warranty, but I can't. I have customers who come to Toronto, let's say for training workshops, from other Canadian cities. They usually fly in because Canada is a large country. We also have customers coming from American states, usually in the Northeast and the Great Lakes region, usually within 1 to 2 hour flight radius. And they ask me, Alexei, well, when the, let's say the workshop ends, I need to get to the airport, like what service should I pick, taxi, or, well, I basically rely on my recommendation. I cannot pass this recommendation to them at face value. If one of my customers has a flight at 6 o'clock to, let's say, Minneapolis, it's an international flight, they should be at the airport at 5 o'clock. Can I advise them to take the 4:30 train? It's 25 minutes. I mean, 25 minutes, guaranteed, high predictability. So you take a 5:30 train and you're on time. 5:15, 5 o'clock, 4:15, 4 o'clock, 3:45. See, we're now trying to control the tail of those 25 minutes. Turns out 25 minutes have a tail. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So it's 25 minutes if those doors closed behind your back and nothing went wrong before or after boarding. And it's longer otherwise. Let's see how much longer. First of all, there's an obvious delay due to frequency. Depending on the time when you show up at the platform, you may have to wait up to 15 minutes. There is also possible transfer from another mode of transportation. And the builders of this train service chose the location of that platform that seems to be the most inconvenient in the entire Union Station complex. So it's usually from subway, it's about 10-minute walk. Oh, by the way, you have to walk 60 stairs up with all your suitcases. But wait, there is more. This is what the platform looks like on a typical weekday afternoon, and this is exactly the scenario my customer from Minnesota was asking me about. Who are all these people? What do you see in this picture? Or rather, what do you not see in this picture? What you don't see is a lot of suitcases. So where are these people going? They're not going to the airport. They're jumping off at one of the midway stations, and they can do that for half the price of going to the airport, although it's slightly more expensive than the subway ride. And those two stations take quite a bit longer to reach by subway. It's usually a 20-stop journey with a transfer. So it's quite a bit longer than 1 to 2 stops on the express train. So for half the price of going to the airport train provides non-flying passengers with an enhanced subway service. And the subway commuters outnumber the air travelers and crowd them out. So here's what happens. The tableau shows that the train has just departed. Actually, the train hasn't even been served for boarding. The line is already out of the platform and into the, well, very nice pavilion that they built around the platform. Boarding and disembarking all these extra passengers at the intermediary stations leads to delays with arrival and then delays with subsequent departure, and those delays tend to propagate. And as a result, even if you arrive at the station on time, you might not be able to board the next train. And the worst case delays, the tail that my out-of-town customers have to manage, can be as much as 30 to 45 minutes. So the actual amount of delay exceeds the travel time. This brings me to realization, and there were several other stories that brought David and I to the realization, and to this realization that was one of the motivations for creating the Fit for Purpose framework, is that there is one important key to innovation. Something's wrong with this picture. I think one of the train cars is missing. Yes, so what was happening is the unpredictable travel times of that train resulted in the inability to maintain the same intervals with the same number of train sets. So the train company had to make more train sets with the same number of cars, and that resulted with some train sets, actually 60% of train sets, lacking one car, which basically means once you show up at the platform and you actually promised a 25-minute journey in a comfortable seat aboard this train so that you can do some 25 minutes of work on your Wi-Fi and whatnot. No, you're actually getting standing room only kind of service if you're unlucky to get one of these two-car train sets. So the key to innovation is to understand that something you did recently is actually an improvement, such as removing a car from this train set is probably not an improvement. We also have to realize that when people think about improvement, they often think about improvement in design or implementation. So would, let's say, a high-speed train, this is not a high-speed train, this is just normal train, diesel train, 130 kilometers maximum speed. Let's say if we upgraded this train to, let's say, proper high-speed train with the maximum rate of speed of, let's say, 300 kilometers per hour, like TGV. Would this be an improvement? No, because we still have a 30 to 45 minute tail to its predictability, whereas increasing the rate of speed by roughly a factor of 2 would only decrease the travel time by about 13 minutes. What if we upgraded that high-speed train to, let's say, maglev, which is about 500 kilometers per hour? Well, that would save us another 6 minutes, but we'd still have a 30 to 45 minute tail due to unpredictability. What about Hyperloop? That saves another 4 minutes. We still have a 30 to 45 minute tail because we haven't figured out the service delivery. Well, forget Hyperloop. There's one better mode of transportation. Teleportation, preferably powered by perpetual motion. Now that saves 2 minutes compared to Hyperloop. And we still have 30 to 45 minute delay due to the management maturity that basically assures inadequate service delivery of this train service. So the technology isn't a constraint here. It's not about design or implementation. The train is already fast enough. It's reliable enough. There's hardly been any interruptions in the service due to technical conditions of the track or the trains. They're highly reliable. They're fast enough, they're safe enough, but it's service delivery that makes all the difference. So treating all your customers the same way is a fragile strategy. In this case, treating the airline passengers willing to pay a high price for a highly predictable service from downtown to the airport, and treating them the same way as commuters going home from downtown to a suburb in the evening, to whom predictability isn't a particularly important criterion, duration is. So it's a fragile strategy. Over-serving your accidental customers, 80% of passengers carried by this train are accidental. They're not target customers. And they don't actually pay the same price as the target customers. So, however, over-serving these accidental customers results in degrading the level of service to key customers. That's a fragile strategy too. And if you don't realize that you overserved and the wrong customers and degraded the service to key customers, then you probably don't have a strategy at all. And to serve diverse customer populations adequately, you have to provide multiple classes of service. Having more than one class of service on a train, like first class and second class, like business and economy, this isn't a new concept. What do all these transportation services have in common? The train that didn't show up in the morning, the bus that boards in the wrong place, that is too unpredictable in the evening, the green train that did not improve service despite the $400 million investment, the shuttle that you can take only one way but not the other, and the three-car train whose variance of travel time on a dedicated track is roughly twice its average travel time, and which sometimes provides you with a very good degree of comfort, and sometimes it's like riding a subway, an overcrowded subway car. What do all these services have in common? Well, besides their geographic location, they're mostly designed to move metal. So passengers going from A to B is an accident. It's a side effect. So these services are accidentally fit for few purposes. And whichever your purpose is, out of 6 or 7 services, you can probably find the fittest one. But the thing is, they're mostly unfit for all other purposes. And the lesson from this is, moving metal isn't enough. Or, in certain areas of knowledge work, writing lines of code isn't enough. Or filling out reports or summaries, or whatever is the equivalent of moving metal in your industry isn't enough. We need to understand who our customers are. We need to understand why they fly. What's their purpose for using our product or service? This lesson applies to all of us, whether we're in travel industry, or software industry, or any other industry. And that's why we developed the Fit for Purpose framework, and that's why we wrote this book. Thank you very much. Here's my contact information.